Hey, what is going on, Dave?
Joe, how are you doing, sir?
It is the my favorite day of the week. We get to do our podcast.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
All right. Well, we will welcome our listeners and our viewers to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. I am one of your hosts, Dr. Joe Hamlett, and my esteemed colleague over here on the other screen is Dr. Dave Peltz. So we'll jump right into it. And so the topic for today is staying the course. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that actually means. Why do you want to stay the course? What happens if you don't stay the course? What's the benefits of staying the course? So with that, Dave, I did just kind of a brief introduction to staying the course. So what are your thoughts on staying the course?
Well, Joe, the first thing that comes to mind is if you don't stay the course, you'll never reach your destination, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and along with staying the course is having kind of a roadmap or a plan to
Yeah.
follow. I mean, I'm all for kind of winging it and jumping in the car and just driving in one direction and seeing where I end up, usually a dirt road or a cul-de-sac. But yeah, staying the course and is definitely has its benefits, and there are pros and cons to it, like you said, and really looking forward to this discussion.
Okay. All right. So I will go ahead and start. So to me, staying the course. As I always do, or most cases I do, I go back to, my journey, my intentional journey. And
Mm.
for me, it became really evident when I first took my very first class. Started my education journey, and I was really nervous, really anxious about going back to school because it had been 23 years for me, and so and I may have mentioned this in previous episodes, but the fact for me was that I had already started school 4 times before that, 4 times. And I didn't have the discipline. I didn't make that commitment to stay the course. And so for me, this fifth time had to be the time that I did this. I had to complete it this time. In fact, once I got going and within the first class, I was really considering dropping again just because I had already formed that pattern of not staying the course, not completing it to task. And
Mhm.
this was another one of those cases where I was really considering that because I looked too far down the road for one. I had this plan of graduating in a certain period of time and it was going to exceed that. And I just started getting discouraged. So it was going to be a repeat of the 4 previous times. And so I'm so thankful that I was able to overcome that because I just can't even imagine where I'd be today if I would had allowed that to rear its head again and allow me to stop. I don't know that I would have recovered enough to try it again later. So I say all that to say I overcame and I stayed the course and completed that first class. And then that first class, go ahead, Dave. You going to
Yeah,
say
I was
something?
going to say you've mentioned a few very important things. One is to
Okay.
commit, one is to this next one is to start, and the next thing is to stay. So commit,
Right.
start, and stay. That's what that's really resonating, what's really jumping out to me.
Right.
So
Right.
please continue. Please continue.
Well, so, as I was saying, finishing that first course,
Hmm.
that was the start of the stay. Because I finished that first course. And then by the time it was all said and done, I can't even remember how many courses I finished at the end or completion of that doctorate degree. But again, my intention or initial intention was to complete an associate's degree. And I went well beyond that by finishing with 2 associate's degrees, a bachelor's, an MBA, and a doctorate. And the reason I was able to do that was because I stayed the course, the
Mhm.
entire course. And I know me and Dave have talked about this on many occasions, but I realized that if after I finished that associate's degree, I took a break. I don't
Right.
know that I would have came back, or even after I made it to my bachelor's degree, I don't think I would have come back, or the master's degree. I don't think I would have come back. So for me, staying the course meant going as far with it as I could. No different again than me in the military. You know, when I started this journey, I was an E6 tech sergeant in the Air Force, and staying the course because I was once I made E7, I had that same consideration. Hey, I got made it to E7. I'm gonna go ahead and get out. Fortunate enough for me, somebody saw something in me that I didn't see, and I was able to stay the course and make it all the way to the senior enlisted position in my organization. Made it to E9, and 1% of the military enlisted population in the military makes it to that level. So again, staying the course and making it all the way to that level. So for me, that's what it's been. Setting that goal, and you said it at the very beginning, setting that goal, setting your sights on that goal, then staying, disciplined, persistent enough to continue until you reach that final destination. Like you said, you get in the car and you want to go to, Chicago, but then you stop in Iowa and never get there. And that was for me, that's what my destination was. To go as far as and initially or originally my sights wasn't set on a doctorate degree. It was really just pushing myself to the point that I couldn't go anymore. And ultimately it was earning that doctorate degree. As the same with the military, it was getting to that highest enlisted position that I could. Um, and that was when I could relax and say, okay, I can't go any further. So staying the course for me was seeing it completely through completion or reaching my destination. Um, and like I said, initially, that was not my destination. I kept moving my destination as I was going along, but it gave me the motivation and persistence to continue beyond, like I say, what I originally set for myself. Because even as an E7, I was like, you know what, I made it to uh, a higher level than I thought I would ever make it. So I'm satisfied with this. And then I had to rethink that, no, I'm not. I want to continue. So that's what it did for me. It just continued to fuel me, gave me more energy to continue to move forward and not settle on just getting to this plateau, but making it to the highest plateau I could. I mean, that's like trying to climb Mount Everest and get to a certain peak that maybe some people have gotten, some haven't, but you never made it all the way to the tip. And so that's kind of what I compare this to, that, yeah, okay, I got my bachelor's or master's degree. There's still much more I can do. And so that's what, for me, staying the course was just going all the way through completion, not stopping at those, intermediate areas. And not to say that that's everybody's goal should be to make it to a doctor, but whatever you set your goal to, stay the course to get there. And in most cases, you're going to look at, you know what? Well, I made it to this goal. I'm ready for the next goal. It may not be in education, it may not go to the doctor level, but it may be something else. So that's the power in staying the course. You just get re-energized, rejuvenated that, hey, I haven't made it there yet. I'm going to continue. So I know, like, I've gone a little bit. Haven't had give you a chance to jump in there and kind of talk about it. Kind of see when is he going to stop? When is he going to stop? So I'll stop right there.
Yeah, so a couple of things that I started thinking about as we talk about staying the course is two things. It's usually there's never a perfect time to start anything, and two, the obstacles that we're going to
Yeah, yeah.
invariably encounter. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about, when's a good time to start, and then I'll go into the obstacle piece. So for me, again, going back to the education journey, um, there's never a good time to start,
Right.
and one of the things I mentioned in one of my books is, it's like buying a puppy, or a pet, or, having a child. There's never really a perfect or ideal time to do it. I mean, for some of us, yeah, there's some windows and opportunities, but generally it's like, there's never a great time to buy a puppy. That's a lot of
Right.
responsibility. There's a lot that goes into it. Same with school, same with, changing jobs, same with, changing careers or changing majors in school, or, pretty much anything, starting a project around the house. For me, it's vacuuming of all things. It's like, when do I start? Oh, I don't have time today. I've got to do it tomorrow or next week. And then pretty soon it's like 2 weeks. I'm like, wow, I really need to do this. Right. So, gas for your car, another good one. Never good. Well, there is a good time when it's not empty and you're on the side of the road. So,
Right.
throwing that out there aligns with commitment and, having a plan. Some of the other topics we've talked about, uh, you just gotta commit to it and just do it. If you want to do something, commit to it and just start that path, that first step. Obstacles. There's always, 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 I'm going to say it again, always going to be obstacles, no matter what. They can be small, they can be like little pebbles, they can be boulders, they can be mountains, they can be universes, just all kinds of things. They can be personal, they can be professional, they can be, physical, mental, whatever. There's always going to be challenges that we're going to face. And the way I face those challenges is they're not hard, they are just that. They are just challenges. Challenges can be overcome. It's human nature to overcome an obstacle. So therefore, adapt and overcome, find some way over, through, around, under, or just bypass it, just get through it, just power through it. So staying the course, those things align to it with that. You just got to start and commit, and you have to persevere through these challenges. Um, there there are some difficult challenges that we are going to face in our journeys, and when we talk about staying the course, if we're talking about our jobs, there are going to be bosses and peers and projects and tasks that we just absolutely cannot stand. We don't want to do them, but you have to persevere, you have to stay the course to get to your goal, to get to your desired end state. And maybe for some of us, that desired end state is just the end of the week or the end of the day or the next hour, or the next project. But you just got to stay the course and have faith and trust in your own abilities and your God or gods or whoever you pray to or not pray to. Just believe in something and know that you and yourself, most of all, that you're going to succeed. You just got to stay the course. So on a personal side, we can get in. I don't want to get into the minutia, but there are relationship challenges with your spouse or
Right.
significant
Right.
other, your
Right.
friends, your children, family members, the environment. That
Right.
we can bring
Yeah.
in socioeconomic. A lot of people were um, in the past 2 years with COVID being in place have been displaced workers and returning to work or not returning to work. What is that's their choice. How do you persevere and stay the course for what's best for you? Some of them were, due to some of those displacements were due to medical issues that are associated with COVID or other illnesses. Some of them are due to financial or family or relationship issues. So how do we do those things? I don't have the answers. I only know how I got through them, and that is it. Basically, to state it simply, stay the course and just persevere and just take things one step at a time. And sometimes that's all you can do when you're
Right.
staying. When we talk about staying the course, sometimes you're living hour by hour, and that's okay. But the important thing is that you stay the course. Just have faith and know that what you're doing is correct. The counterpoint I'm going to offer to that is know when to reevaluate, because sometimes staying that course
Right.
means
Right.
changing direction. Maybe it
Absolutely.
means a lateral to the left, a lateral to the
Yep.
right, stepping up, stepping down, you know, whatever. You got to reevaluate in order to get to your end state. Staying the course may mean changing course. Using the travel analogy, going to
Absolutely.
Chicago,
That's actually where I
it's
was going to
not a
go with that.
straight path,
Yeah.
that you've got your highway right to the Chicago right there. It's just a straight line. But then you get to Iowa or Kansas, and then there's that detour and road work that takes you back through
Right. Yeah.
Nevada, up through
Exactly.
Oregon, Minnesota, then to Chicago, but
That's
you get
exactly what I
there.
was going to mention. Those detours that come
Mhm.
at, come to us, and like you said before, small pebbles, or they turn into big boulders, and they make us have to alter our path completely. You're absolutely correct. And when I was speaking of my journey and getting staying the course and getting to the doctor level and being a chief, you're right. I didn't mention the fact that there were obstacles I had to overcome. I had to reevaluate several times because, yeah, I made it sound like, oh yeah, I made it to doctor, I made it to chief, no problem. No, that is not the case. But to your point, and the thing was that I stayed with it until the end. I continued to stay
Mhm.
the course regardless of what things I faced, what challenges I faced. I had to continue to push through those. And sometimes it was taking a step back, evaluating, recorrecting that course, no different than a pilot that's flying, he runs into rough, weather, and he has to alter his course to go a different direction because he can't go through it. He's going to put everybody's lives at risk. No different. He still made it to his destination. He had to take a slight detour, and like again the analogy you made with the car, same thing. Where you're gonna absolutely run into obstacles and detours and things that get in your way that you're gonna have to deal with and handle. So yeah, I didn't want to make it seem like that for me it was just peachy king and I made it to those levels with no problems. Because if you go back to what I said originally was the fact that I had actually started school 4 times. I had actually
Mhm.
set the first time I didn't even make it to the class. I actually just enrolled in the class a couple of weeks before, or a week before the class started. I basically took my name off the list, didn't even attend class. Then the second time I went for a week. Then the third time I went for, several weeks. Then the fourth time I'd actually made it through a semester, but then I stopped. So, I allowed some of those detours and barriers or roadblocks to distract me, to, take me away from staying the course. And so, yeah, I absolutely had that. And that's why, like I said, I knew I had to overcome those things this time, because if I would have, not went through that first class and continue to propel forward, I don't know that I would be here today. I think it was that tipping point for me that I had to, persevere, had to overcome whatever those, whether it was fear or just a lack of that commitment that I was willing to make, whatever it was. I knew this particular time I had to do it. And so,
Yeah.
but at this time was different too, was because it came down to I had a destination in mind this time. In the previous times, that wasn't the case.
It's
So
interesting that some of the things you're saying are really sounding interesting and are resonating with me. And I think about my educational journey. And when I started school, I was in the military, and I was like, well, I have to get my associates first. And
right,
to this day, I think I could still go in, fill out the paperwork, and receive an associate's kind of post facto. Not sure it's going to make a difference
right,
aside from
right,
me saying, oh, and I got that too. It was, 25 years after this, but
right, right,
where I'm going with this is it's okay to change your course and
right.
change your
Absolutely.
end state or your end goal. So for me, I started out thinking, well, I need to go to school to get my associates. And I'm going down this path. And then I'm like, well, no, it's actually going to take me longer if I get my associates and then
Yeah,
my bachelor's versus, sidestepping my goal, changing my goal to just get my bachelor's. And that's what I
yeah,
wound up doing. And, that's okay too. It may
yep,
be for a job. Maybe you're in a career path and you've been doing your job for a short time or a long time, and you realize this isn't for me, or this isn't what I want, or I want to
right,
do
right,
something different for whatever reasons, or I need to do something different. It's okay to change course. Like you said, sometimes stepping back a little bit or stepping over to find another end state. And maybe if we're going to Chicago, we end up in, Minneapolis, and that's where we stay. But maybe that winds up being our end state and our
right.
goal. But we
Absolutely.
have
Yeah,
persevered, and that is okay. You
right,
don't have to decide on something and be locked in. That's the cool thing about being a human being. We have
right.
the freedom of choice and we can make our decisions. And part of that is reevaluating one, our goal. Maybe we're wanting to go to Chicago, but we realize we're going to wind up arriving in the middle of January because that's a great
Right,
time to be in
right,
Chicago,
right,
right?
right,
For snow and cold. And
right,
maybe we decide, well, we get halfway there. Maybe Chicago isn't really where we want to be. It's not what we thought we wanted to be, where we wanted to be. And maybe we end up in Florida, in Miami, or maybe we wind up in Dallas or Los Angeles. But we still followed it through. It's just that the destination changed. It
right,
doesn't mean
absolutely.
we
Yep,
didn't follow through. We did follow through. It's just that the destination or the goal changed. And that is good. That's actually a very good thing because we've talked to several people in our careers, many people that have gone to their end state and said, wow, this is not what I wanted. If I just
right,
would have
yep,
changed halfway or a quarter or
yep,
75% or 80%, I could be closer to or at the destination where I really want to be. And, for me, that was my education. I wanted to get a master's degree, but I didn't know what it was in. And I thought I wanted to get an MBA. I'm glad I did, but my specialization was different than what I thought. I wanted to have just a hardcore MBA,
right,
master's of business administration. Yeah, get me out. I just want that solid box. And I
right,
started doing it and I'm like, wow, I really don't want to take these extra finance and statistics courses.
right.
So I changed it from being a boxed MBA, if you will, to a specialization in global management, which
Okay, yep,
didn't really change the statistics and financial piece because
right,
I still had to
right.
take those classes, except
I was gonna
instead of just
say
being down here, it's
you
like
end
now you
up
get to do
still
it at the
doing it.
macro level up
Right.
here from a global perspective. So, and then to put on additional irony, when I got my doctorate, I'm like, oh, I'm going to teach leadership, yeah, because that's what my stuff is, my degree's in. And they're like, oh, you have lots of statistics courses, you're going to teach statistics. I'm like, well, that's not my desired end state, but we'll
Right,
go with it, but
right,
it was part of my end state. It just looked different than what I was expecting.
right,
And,
right.
it's an is what it is. And that's okay.
No,
I chose to teach those classes. I wasn't forced into it. So to your point, staying the course can look different at different times.
absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because you're absolutely correct. My end state changed multiple times, just like yours. Very similar.
Mhm.
I thought the first step was to get that associate's, and I actually did the same thing. I ended up getting my bachelor's degree first.
Mhm.
Then I had to go back to get the associate. I had to take, I didn't get my associates till a year later because I
Mhm.
still had to go back and, take some required classes. So yeah, to your point, your in-state may look a little different than what you initially thought. Even with my MBA, same thing. I was going to get the MS, in IT
Mhm.
management. And then like you, I said, you know what, I'll go and get this MBA, just kind of like you, that hey, that MBA sounds good, but then I also still did the concentration in IT management, so it was
Yeah.
more still a focused. And
Mhm.
even into the doctorate, into my doctorate program, I initially started along the path of a doctorate in business administration in IT management. That is actually what I signed up for originally.
Mhm.
And then, like you just said, you wanted to teach leadership because that was what your doctor was in. I realized, my passion was more people oriented. So that's why I switched to organizational leadership. So you're right. We design our path, or, that end state where we would like to go, but multiple times it could change. And that's acceptable and that's okay. And like you say, that realignment sometimes may be better if you consider making those changes versus, okay, I set my end state 10 years ago. I said I'm going to be here. And like you said, you get there and you're like, man, why didn't I change this, at 5 years or 6 years and go down a different path? Because this is not really what I want to do. But it's still all about that
Mhm.
reevaluation. Like you said, your destination originally might have been Chicago, but then you end up in Florida just because as things were being put in front of you, obstacles, barriers, or whatever, and you having to change course a little bit, but staying on course, but just changing it trajectory differently, that could, change that overall end state. And
Mhm.
so that's why that each self-evaluation, that's still that critical reflection is still important,
Yeah.
that you really pay attention to that. And like, yeah, again, not just blindly, like you say, go directly to Chicago, and that really, all these obstacles got in your way, and you still overcame them, which are great, but you end up in a place that you really didn't want to be, or you shouldn't be. So
Yeah.
it's definitely important to, as you're staying the course, to also offer, embrace that opportunity to maybe slightly change your course if you need to,
Mhm.
do that course correction, to
Maybe
get
you
you
change it a
step,
lot. Maybe you realize that,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
this is not for you. It's better to change course when you realize that and accept it and embrace it
Right.
than to wind up staying the course, but you wind up in a destination you don't want to be at.
Right.
And
Right.
and to provide a little clarification on why I say that is, just because you don't reach the original destination does not mean you failed. That is
Right.
absolutely
Right. Yep.
incorrect.
Yep.
The only time you fail is if you don't try. Even if you try and you don't succeed, you've still tried. And this is nothing new. I'm not trying to steal anyone's, quotes or anything like that. But I read, I don't know, a while back that, you don't fail if you try. You fail if you don't try,
Right. Right.
because you're
Yep.
going to learn from that experience.
Yep.
It may not be pleasant, but you're going to learn from it.
Right.
Getting back to the analogy of don't touch the hot stove, and you're like, hmm, well, you learned.
Right.
The long scenic route, like we talk about.
Right.
You don't have to complete that long scenic route. If you find another destination along the way, maybe it's part of yourself, through introspection, and you realize, hey, I don't want to be, let's say, a lawyer or a doctor or a scuba diver. I want to be an artist or a roofer or a painter.
Right.
That's
Right.
fine.
Yep.
You just got to be true to yourself and really decide, where do you really want to be, and reevaluate and stay that course to get you where you want to be. And if you do finish that course and it's not where you want to be, try again until you get to where you do want to be. You're still staying that course. At that point, your journey has not ended. It's just a continuation of, well, this is where I didn't want to end up, or I got to Chicago. I don't like the cold weather.
Right.
I don't like
Right.
the humidity, the mosquitoes. I'm going to go to Florida. Well, they have humidity and mosquitoes, but it's just not as hot
Right.
or as
Right.
cold. I'm
Right.
sorry.
Well, and you make a very good point as far as, going back to, and we've talked about this in the past, you still control your own destiny. It's still your choice. Even if you set up this destination, like I say, or this end state 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and as you're going and you've made all these plans, and, people around you know that's where you're heading, it's still your choice to say, hey, that's not the path I want to take anymore, or that's not where I want to end up.
Mhm.
That is still your choice. And
Yep.
so, yeah, because, even thinking about when with our kids, we want them to have the best. And a lot of times we project that what we want for them onto them, but that may not be what they want. So,
That's interesting that you say that, because one of my mentors, when I was working in the defense area, had told me that he was talking about him and his son, and they were both in the military. And he had said, he was talking to his son about, what he needs to do in the military and where he needs
mhm,
to go. And his son was like, Dad, that's just not quite what I want to do. And
right,
him and I were talking, because my son was thinking about going in the military and stuff. And he's like, what I had to realize, Dave, is that my journey was not his journey.
exactly.
And that's really important to consider too, because now we get into the self-reflection piece about, comparing ourselves to others, and that
Right,
our
right.
journeys, like you and I, are very, very, very uncannily similar.
Don't
There's
worry
those
about your
words again.
doctor. Go ahead
Yeah.
and make up a word if you want
Yeah. Superficiously are very, very similar. But
Right.
when you start, looking with the magnifying glass, or zooming in, if you will, you'll realize that there are many, many differences, and that's okay too. I mean, I told my son, I want you to get your bachelor's degree. I don't expect you to get a doctorate degree. If you do,
Right.
that's great. But
Absolutely. Yep.
your journey is your journey. This was
Yep.
my journey. And that's the difference. And I believe that actually helped him get through some of his tough times in getting his bachelor's degree, because he didn't feel the pressure to do
Right, right,
other
right,
to go further than what he did, because that was not the expectation. I wanted him to be his own person and
right.
have his
Yep,
own journeys
absolutely.
and not detract from what he wanted to do or his passions.
It's
So
funny you say that because, once I completed my doctorate degree, that's one of the questions I was asked. So you set the bar pretty high for your kids. So you expect them to get a doctorate degree? And I said, no, of course not. I expect them to be the best version of themselves.
yep,
That's what I want for them. I don't
yep.
want them to,
I want them to
jokingly,
stay the
jokingly,
course for their journey.
right. Jokingly at first, I was like, yeah, they got to get their doctor. But again, that was a joke because
Yeah.
I want the best for my kids and, them choosing their own path, their own journey. To our point, you know, set these expectations. You get your doctorate and they struggle to get there, and that's not what they wanted to do. It doesn't
Right.
make sense for that. So staying the course, yeah, but their own course,
Their own
plotting out
course,
their
your
own
own course,
course.
your own
Yeah,
individual course.
not
Yep.
somebody else. It goes back again, defining what success means to you, developing your own plan based on where you want to go. All those
Mhm.
things still are important. Just because we say stay the course, stay your own course. Don't stay somebody else's course.
And
So so
I'm gonna mention one more thing as we kind of wind down. This will be
yeah.
my final thought.
Okay.
You know, when we talk about staying the course, and we've iterated many times. We're here to hopefully encourage and support our viewers and listeners in their journeys.
Right.
And we always say, we're here to help you not necessarily have to take the long scenic route.
Right.
But if that is your choice, that is okay. If that is part of your journey, maybe you don't want that direct path. Maybe you want to take that long
Right.
scenic
Yeah.
route with the understanding, yeah, it's going to be long and scenic and take longer, but there are pros and cons to both
Absolutely.
arguments. There's, I want to get there sooner so I can start doing these things, or I don't have much time, so I'm going to do it this way, or I want to take the long scenic route because there is a much more diverse, rich, qualitative aspect to that journey, but it is
Right.
going to take longer.
Yep.
In both cases, the individual still stayed the course, even though I may wind up over here and they may wind up over there. We've still stayed our own individual courses and journeys to get to where we want to be. And that's really the point of this discussion, is just persevere, because chances are very few things in life are going to be easy. And if they are,
Right. Right.
congratulations, that's
Right.
wonderful. But
Yep.
if not, it's not the end of the world by any means. It just
Yep.
means your journey is a little bit different.
Right. Well, thanks for that, Dave. Thanks for kind of summarizing to staying the course and just identifying that. Yeah, we're like you said, we're here to offer maybe helpful suggestions to help you maybe not take that long and scenic route like we did. But I always tell people this: I do not discount any experience I have had to
Absolutely.
this point because I would
Yep.
not be here without those.
Yeah.
So,
We wouldn't
like,
be who we are without them.
exactly. So, to Dave's point, even if you take in all this information that we've provided for you and you select your own journey, that is absolutely great, absolutely acceptable because, again, it is your journey. And so, we're just here to assist you in any way we can. If you can take one simple thing from any of the episodes you listen to us, then we're happy with that.
Yeah.
Like you said, we're here to assist you with your journey as well as you're here to help us with our journey. So, with that, this is a pretty good conversation. I think we could go on, continue this for a long period of time, but for the sake of time and not to bore you anymore, we want to thank you for tuning in to the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. We really do appreciate you listening and watching us. And if there's something you want us to talk about or topics you want us to touch on, feel free to leave us a comment, like the video if you're watching it on YouTube. But we're here for you. This is our journey, all of our journeys. So with that, you continue being your not so ordinary you.